So, as some of you probably already know, Mexico continues to make headlines about an ongoing battle they're having with drug cartels. Unfortunately, this war has led to at least 35,000 deaths since 2006 related to the drug trade. Mexico actually has a very strict gun control policy, and they do this by restricting sales and ammo sales. Having one bullet in your possession illegally can lead to some major jail time. And the main question people have been asking is, where are these guns, and where mainly is the ammunition coming from? If ammunition is so hard to purchase in Mexico, then it's got to be coming from somewhere else, because it seems like there's an endless supply. With some of the research I did, it looks like upwards of 90% of all ammunition found at some of these crime scenes have come from the United States. Jose Wall, who's a senior trafficking agent with the ATF, said he couldn't remember the last time that he found a bullet that was from somewhere else other than the USA, meaning he can't find the ammo that comes from, Mexico or even another country of that sort. All of it seems to be pointed that it's coming from the United States. In the past year, the Arizona border has seized 95,000 rounds of ammunition this year alone. Not, the deaths were from 2006, but ammunition alone, they've seized 95,000 rounds trying to get illegally smuggled into Mexico. The border states like Texas and Arizona, they have very little gun control, meaning, you can buy a firearm as long as you're of age and a U.S. citizen. You can just kind of get whatever you'd like. The only restriction that Texas and Arizona have, or I guess as the USA as a whole, is they do require you to be a United States citizen in order to purchase ammunition. And with that being known, you'd wonder, how are they able to smuggle all this ammo across the border if you have to be a U.S. citizen? One of the reasons is obviously, citizens of the United States are helping them, and that's a big possibility. However, one thing that seems to come up most of the time is there's no law that requires gun shops to check for any sort of ID to prove that they are in fact United States citizens, and this is a big problem. Gun shops don't have, whenever they sell ammunition, they don't have to check for ID. So even if it is, an immigrant or, someone working on a temporary visa or a traveler's visa, unless a gun shop just feels like asking, they're not required to. Which this reminds me a little bit of the Italian tax more case, where, the local standard was obviously the culture expected you to lie, so therefore the government would raise it. So the government, since they don't require you to ask, it's really up to the businesses themselves to decide if they'd like to ask a customer or not. And this is a big issue because is there an ethical problem with them choosing not to ask, even though technically they're supposed to? What sort of ethical obligation do they have to ask? And we're going to look at a few ways to kind of decide whether or not they should, or if they have an obligation to. If we apply Friedman's stockholder theory, based on that, their only obligation is to the stockholders and to make money. And their only ethical responsibility is to make sure they're following the laws of the country as well as the customs. And as we saw in the Italian tax more case, the custom was to lie. And apparently in the United States, especially in those cities, the custom is to just not ask. So looking at it from that point, it basically means the local gun shops should sell as much ammunition as possible to maximize their revenue. And technically, since legally they don't have to ask, therefore they don't have to. So they should just keep selling it and selling it, and make as much money as they can, and that's kind of what they should do if they're following the stockholder theory. And to contrast this argument, you could almost argue, if you sell ammo to a person and you don't ask, and then that person smuggles it, and that ammo is used to kill someone, then you could argue that will hurt for future business, because the people who you're selling ammo to are dying, therefore you lose business. So you could say that would be a pretty good counter argument to the stockholder theory, or that's kind of the flaw I see in it. If we apply Freeman's stakeholder argument, we need to look at all the parties involved and who all the gun selling affects. First of all, we have the gun shop employees and the people who manufacture the ammo. We also have the drug cartels and the people who are actually doing all the smuggling. Third, we have government agencies who are, they're having to put more people at the border trying to control this because the gun shops aren't keeping an eye on it. And fourth, we have, just innocent citizens of Mexico, those who get caught in the crossfire, those who are just around. Those are also people who get affected by this. When United States gun shops don't check ID and this ammo gets smuggled, these innocent people are getting hurt, just as well as, the Mexican government having to pay more money to keep an eye on the border because they're having to police it more than if the company just asks. By United States companies selling this ammo to Mexican smugglers, we're really devaluing the innocent people. Freeman's stakeholder argument says, we need to make all parties intrinsically valuable without as little trade-offs as possible. So we can see that, by selling ammo, even though that's a good thing for the drug cartels and the people smuggling it, on the other hand, you have people who are innocently dying. So your trade-off there are innocent deaths. However, that's sort of the only trade-off. If you look at it from the other way, when that ammo gets sold, the local companies are making revenue, which is good for the United States because that means tax money. That means, the businesses are doing well. That means the companies that make the ammo are making money, so that's good. As well as, the people who are smuggling the ammo, those are people who don't have a job elsewhere, so they're actually finding employment by smuggling it. So that's kind of a added benefit for selling the ammo without checking for ID. You're just handing it off, and they've got a job, as well as the drug cartels are getting, they're getting their ammo and they're able to do their drug thing. So that's, whether that's ethical or not, but it seems to be giving them some sort of satisfaction. If you look at it that way, it seems that the stakeholder theory would point to, not asking for ID because it seems like every party benefits, and the only trade-off are, innocent people dying. Which, if you look at all those equally, it seems like the better idea is to actually not enforce the law and just sell as much as you can. If we look at utilitarianism, you'll see we need to look at, what option gives us the best amount of happiness overall. How do we maximize happiness? By local companies selling this ammo, they're creating happiness to all aspects of the company. The company's happy, they're making money. Just like in stakeholder theory, like I was saying a minute ago, one could argue that the U.S. companies allowing them to purchase ammo is creating jobs for smugglers. With this economy, you can see a lot of people are jobless. So this is actually giving people jobs, which is creating happiness for them and their family, which is a really good thing. Drug cartels are happy. They're getting their ammo. So that is creating happiness for them. So just like stakeholder theory, it looks like the best option would to be sell as much ammo as possible and not ask for ID, not enforce the law, because it's actually creating more happiness overall by not enforcing it. If we enforce the law, the gun shops would lose revenue, the stockholders would lose revenue, the smugglers would be out of a job. So if we just judge by utilitarianism, it seems like the best decision would be, not to enforce the law, because by not enforcing the law, you're actually maximizing happiness. If we did enforce the law, you'd be minimizing happiness because all those parties, drug cartels, the people selling ammo, as well as the people getting jobs by smuggling it, that you're minimizing happiness. The only happiness you're maximizing is the innocent lives that could have been lost, which technically they wouldn't even know it. So really, there's no trade-off. You're just making more people miserable overall. So to me, it seems like utilitarianism clearly shows that they shouldn't enforce the law. So if we apply Kantian ethics to the situation, we need to apply each action universally. We need to take an action, let's say they decide to not check for ID, and we need to apply that for all gun shops around the world. And if we do that, we see a lot of problems with that. You get, criminals being able to buy ammunition and guns. We see, kids drinking because you can't ID, you don't require you to check kids' ID. You get murderers buying weapons. You get, people claiming to be other people. It would create chaos. So we can see that by not checking ID, Kantian ethics would truly say that that's the worst thing to do. They would actually say, we should check for ID because if we check for ID, the ammo doesn't get sold to the wrong people. You can't drink unless you're legal drinking age. You don't have 7-year-olds smoking cigarettes. So it would appear that it seems like we should, even though local businesses aren't required to, it looks like Kant says they should. They have an ethical responsibility to ID people before they can buy ammo. If we apply virtue ethics to this case, we kind of need to look at the intent of the gun shops and see, why would they not check for ID, or why would they? What's their reasoning for doing so? And I read a couple articles, and it looks like, if you ask a gun company why they don't ID, the main thing I saw was, you might offend somebody. You don't want to offend local citizens. You don't want to think you're saying, hey, you must be an illegal. Some people might think you might be borderline racist because you see a Hispanic person who might be a U.S. citizen and you automatically judge that they're not. So for gun shops, that's a lot of pressure. They might lose business that way if they start checking for ID. However, if you look at it from the point that the gun shops are honestly trying to do what's virtuous, they're trying to. I looked at there's 6 dimensions of how to be virtuous, and the 2 that I thought were big were the virtue of community and the virtue of integrity. If they didn't ask for ID, their intention could be, I want to build a sense of community. I want to show that I trust my customers. I want to show that anyone who walks in here, I'm going to trust them so they come back. Because if you don't, they're just going to go somewhere else. They're going to go somewhere that people don't judge them and, automatically assume that they're doing something wrong. But you could say even because they're doing it virtuously, they're trying to keep people safe. You could say that's the right decision. Especially if they don't ask for ID, you could say they're being virtuous. So it's hard to say which one. It really depends on what their intention for checking. If their pure intention is just money, then maybe that's the wrong decision. But if they're truly trying to do something that builds community or shows integrity, then that's probably the right decision. And after looking at all of these, just to conclude, most of them are actually kind of pointing towards not asking for ID. I mean, we look at stakeholder and stockholder. Both say that we shouldn't ask for ID because we're creating value for everybody, as little trade-offs as possible. We looked at stockholder, and we saw that it's, in order to maximize revenue and by staying, along the customs and laws, it seems that the best decision is to not ask for ID, not to enforce the law. We look at utilitarianism, maximize happiness. That also shows it supports not enforcing the law. So right there we've got 3 theories that are obviously showing that we shouldn't enforce the law. The only 2 that seem to conflict with this are Kant and virtue ethics, because they deal with the intention behind the action. So in my opinion, based on all these theories we've looked at, it seems like the right decision is actually for the companies to not ask for ID. only because ethically it seems like it creates the most happiness overall. Now, utilitarianism does say, pure, some happiness is more pure than others. And you could definitely say that, someone dying is much worse than drug dealers not having ammo. You could say their happiness is better. But overall, it still seems to point that not asking for ID is actually the right solution. Personally, that may seem like an ethical problem, but based on these theories, it seems to be that, not local companies shouldn't have to enforce the law because they're not required to. So, yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I think this is a really interesting case, especially since it affects us right now.